Today, we're going to connect one of the most terrifying diseases in all of human history with something you might have in your fridge right now. I know it sounds a little wild, but the link is a family of bacteria called Yersinia. They're responsible for everything from the Black Death to a nasty case of food poisoning. So let's dive in and see how this one family has left such a massive mark on our world. Seriously, it sounds like the beginning of a really strange joke, right? I mean, on one hand, you have a historical catastrophe that literally reshaped the world, and on the other, a really, really bad tummy ache. So what on earth could possibly link those two things?
And there it is. The answer is a single bacterial genus, Yersinia. And what's so fascinating is that while there are three main species in this family that give us humans trouble, they cause totally different problems. Let's break down how.
Okay, so when you talk about the Yersinia family, you pretty much have to start with the most notorious member of the group, the one that left a deep, dark scar on human history. Meet Yersinia pestis. For thousands of years, this bacterium has been an absolute force of nature. We're talking about epidemics and pandemics that could literally topple empires. It is no exaggeration at all to say it's one of the most significant microbes we've ever faced. You can actually trace its reign of terror across three huge pandemics. Way back in the 6th century, the Justinian plague did a real number on the Mediterranean. Then came the big one in the 14th century, the Black Death, which wiped out up to a third of the population of Europe. And it's not even ancient history. A third pandemic kicked off in Asia in the late 1800s and spread across the entire globe. The way this disease jumps from animals to us is, well, it's a grim but incredibly efficient cycle. It all starts in rodents. A flea bites an infected rat, and then this is where things get truly horrifying. The bacteria multiplies inside the flea's gut until it forms a blockage, so the flea is literally starving. This drives it into a feeding frenzy, and with every desperate bite, it basically vomits bacteria into the wound of a new host. And sometimes, that new host is a person. So what did this actually look like in a person? Well, the most common form is bubonic plague. It hits you like a truck. Sudden high fever, chills, weakness, but the defining feature, the thing that gives it the name, is the bubo. This is an intensely painful, swollen lymph node right near where the flea bit you, and it shows up within just a day or two. And remember, back then, there were no antibiotics. Your chances of surviving bubonic plague were not good. We're talking a mortality rate somewhere between 50 and 90%. For all intents and purposes, getting it was a death sentence. All right, let's shift gears. We're going to move from that world-ending plague to its lesser-known but much more common relatives. Now, these guys don't cause pandemics, but they are absolute masters of disguise in a clinical setting. Just listen to how these symptoms are described. Acute diarrhea, mesenteric adenitis, terminal ileitis, and pseudoappendicitis. You see, we're not talking about buboes and mass death anymore. We're talking about gut problems that can perfectly mimic other much more common conditions. And this is their signature move, pseudoappendicitis. A patient comes into the ER with all the classic signs of appendicitis: pain in the lower right abdomen, a fever, the works. They get rushed into surgery, only for the surgeon to find a totally healthy appendix. The real culprit is Yersinia, causing inflammation in the nearby lymph node. So let's meet our two main imposters. First, you've got Yersinia enterocolitica. You can see its main source is pigs, which is why it's so often linked to undercooked pork. This is a super common cause of gastroenteritis, especially in little kids. Then there's Yersinia pseudotuberculosis. This one's found more broadly in the environment, and it's the classic cause of that fake appendicitis we just talked about, usually in slightly older kids and teenagers. Okay, so we have one species that causes a deadly historic plague, and two others that mostly just cause tummy troubles. How are they even related? Well, it turns out they all share a core set of genetic weapons. The key to their shared ability to make us sick is something called the PYV plasmid. The easiest way to think about it is like a separate, portable instruction manual. It's this tiny, circular piece of DNA that all three of these pathogenic Yersinia species carry. And this plasmid holds the blueprints for the weapons they need to cause disease. And that blueprint builds some pretty sophisticated gear. They produce these things called YAPS proteins, which they use like tiny little needles to inject toxins directly into our immune cells, basically paralyzing them. This allows them to hide and even multiply inside the very cells that are supposed to be destroying them. They're also master thieves when it comes to iron, which is an essential mineral our bodies work really hard to hide from invaders. And this whole iron-stealing ability has a really fascinating clinical side effect. People who have conditions that cause their bodies to store too much iron, like hemochromatosis, are way more vulnerable to getting a severe systemic Yersinia infection. It's like the bacteria's greatest strength targets a very specific human vulnerability. So now that we understand their shared weapons, how do we actually deal with this family of bacteria today, in an age of modern medicine and global food supply chains?
Well, for Yersinia pestis, the story is one of incredible change. What was once a civilization-ending threat is now a rare disease. It still exists in certain parts of the world, for sure, including the American Southwest, but those massive, terrifying outbreaks are thankfully a thing of the past. And the reason for that dramatic change is one of the greatest success stories in all of modern medicine: antibiotics. They've completely transformed the outcome of plague, dropping the mortality rate from as high as 90% down to around 10%. And for its imposter cousins, the prognosis is even better, with a mortality rate of less than 2%.
And luckily, prevention is pretty straightforward. For plague, it's all about avoiding contact with wild rodents in areas where it's known to exist and controlling fleas on your pets. For the other Yersinia species, it really just comes down to food safety, especially cooking pork thoroughly, and basic hygiene, like washing your hands. So, from the Black Death to a bout of food poisoning, the Yersinia family has had this profound, incredible impact on humanity. It's a powerful reminder of how pathogens evolve. We may have contained its deadliest member, but its relatives are a constant, low-level threat in our food supply. Which really leaves us with a big question. What will the next chapter be for this ancient and versatile family of bacteria?